Hi, I'm Shauna,
And I'm Jonna.
and
And
we
we
are
are
Support
Support Jeffco
Jeffco
Kids.
Kids. Today we're here to talk to you about the Fairtex Colorado Initiative 271 and the Jeffco Schools budget cuts. Jonna, I'll just hand off to you.
Okie dokie, thank you. So before I even start with this, I want to make sure everybody understands that between the time we put these slides together, which was about 2 weeks ago, and today when we're recording this, which is May 20th, a whole lot has happened at the Capitol with regard to the budget and revenue. So there will be some updates that we will give you as we move along, but things are just rapidly changing faster than almost anybody can keep track of. But we really wanted to talk to you today, beginning with Initiative 271, Fairtex Colorado. And that's because we really do believe, especially now, as we watch things happening with our economy and with our state's budget and our schools budget, we believe this is a lifeline, and it is definitely a long-term solution to what we would say is an inadequate tax system. So 2 key points about 271, Fairtex Colorado, is that it does create a tiered tax structure where all Coloradans receive a tax cut on the first $250,000 of taxable income. So it lowers the current 4.63% to 4.58%. And again, that's about 95 of the state's taxpayers, to be quite honest. Considering what we're going through with the economy, that 95% may have increased significantly too. But it helps equalize across all taxpayers the portion of income they pay in state and local taxes.
Perfect. And I actually just want to make sure that we throw in the fact that people who make more money purchase more services rather than goods. And in Colorado, services are not taxed. So the tax system that we have, the structure is very inequitable.
That is absolutely correct, Shauna. And while a big piece of 271 is that it is indeed a graduated tax increase, which would impact 5% of Colorado's taxpayers. And you see here we have a link that you can check out. We encourage everybody to go to that link, check your own numbers, and share it with your friends. And that's the tax calculator, so you can see for yourself how you would be impacted. We have a little scale here. This is taken from the information, directly from the information Fairtex Colorado provides with regard to tax year 2021, what the rates would be. And certainly if you ever have any questions, feel free to contact either of us. And I'm not going to run through this. I think it's pretty easy to figure out. But again, go to the tax calculator. Now, what's a good point here for that we want to make sure everybody is aware of is that there has been some polling. And when voters were asked their preference and how to close that $2 billion state budget deficit, which I think grew since they actually did the polling, 7 out of 10 voters said that the state should avoid cuts to schools, avoid cuts to roads and to healthcare, and that would be by increasing taxes on the wealthy. And that, my friends, was across party lines, genders, ages, income levels, and geographic regions. Let's face it, everybody in Colorado is suffering right now. And when you can offer 95% plus your taxpayers with a tax cut, that's pretty impressive.
Well, and truly, those folks who make over $250,000 a year, they're actually still getting a tax cut on their first $250,000, and 69% of the state. That's huge to see agreement.
Absolutely. So, considering everything that we're seeing now, we need a reliable source to supplement funding for schools. Our schools are being decimated with this economic downturn. Initiative 271, the latest fiscal impact statement showed that it would raise $2 billion. That may have changed slightly just because of the economic impact. But you need to know that that revenue is required to be appropriated 50% for schools, and that would be for pre-primary through 12th grade. And then the other 50% goes to take care of all those other services and needs that the state's having to cut right now as a result of our shortfall, our budget shortfall. Now, these graphs, pretty much what these graphs are intended to show you is that while on the left you can see that as we were recovering, our general fund revenue went up. But you can see with the graph on the right, that is our budget stabilization factor. And some important things that I really want to point out here is that not since 2008, 2009 year have we actually fully funded Amendment 23. And at that time, education, we received $19.82, an additional $19.82 per pupil. And then of course, as you see those bars going down, that shows you how deep our budget stabilization factor grew. Now, what's important to note is that over the last 11 years, while we were increasing that budget stabilization factor or digging that bigger hole, that at least we started out from above zero. The impacts that we're going to take now, we're already in a hole and digging. So yes, over $500 million, that's $572 million is what the budget stabilization sits at currently, and growing, and not in a good way. Now, as I said, some things have changed since we put this together, but the last presentation that we had here to the school board from staff was they had a couple of scenarios for possible reductions. There was a 5% reduction, 10%, 15, 20% reduction that the district was trying to plan around. And as you see, that ranged anywhere from $30.5 million to $101 million that the budget reductions would have to take place. Last we heard, the district staff was looking at 12% because they knew it was going to be, they expected that it would be over 10% and are hoping that it doesn't reach all the way to 15%. Again, those numbers could very definitely change based on how things are changing down at the Capitol.
Well, and that's concerning to me, you know, as a parent of a high schooler, and we've cut so much before during the Great Recession when all of those current 10th graders actually walked into school. We started cutting their education. It's concerning to me because we're #1 in the nation in teen vaping, and we're #1 in youth suicide. And we have only just started trying to restore some of those social emotional supports in our school to help our kids get through a lot of this. I worry now that those social emotional supports, because they're extra, could be things that we start looking at cutting again because they're not required and through a mandate.
Absolutely. So this, we are being told, and I think there's good reason to believe that this is the first of a multi-year event based on Tabor restrictions, a very strained economy, and history tells us that the last 2 recessions lasted 4 budget years. So the folks down at the Capitol are preparing to have to deal with more cuts and more reductions next year, and our school districts will have to do that too if we don't turn things around. We've been here before and it was ugly, and we wanted to give you all, or remind everybody what it looked like in during the Great Recession in Jeffco. And the thing that we should point out here is that in that first bullet where we talk about a reduction of over 63 million, that was 9%. We need to remember that that was over a 2-year period, 2009-10 year to the 2012-2013 year. What's happening right now is happening over months that we're going to have to make these cuts, which makes them all the more devastating. And you know, we're going to impact our reserves for it. And even though we're going to take money out of our reserves as we look to take on to deal with the reductions this year, we've got to keep in mind that this is, again, it's a multi-year event, and there's going to be more to come.
And I just want to point out too, I mean, we're really fortunate that we have you. You were co-chair during the 2012 Mill and Bond, and I was sort of your third wheel when Morgan was starting school there. And, you know, I mean, fighting just to keep teachers, librarians, instructional coaches, all the things that we were proposing to cut out of the budget. And the things that we did cut, we still haven't gotten back.
That's right. Once it goes, you don't see it come back. So we need to keep that in mind. So these, based on the last couple of board meetings that we've observed, these are the cuts and the scenarios that our district leadership are going to have to look at. They're going to have to look at pay reductions. We're going to be talking about layoffs. We're going to be talking about losing programs or cutting them significantly. Everything's on the table, and especially when you're talking about some cuts that are as significant as the ones that we're facing now.
And I particularly love this slide that you created with your graphics. It is it's a hard conversation. I don't envy our board members at all. I do appreciate that we have some of those school board members who have been very good about advocating for community voice and community participation. So as those surveys and sessions come up, people really should be joining in to listen to the full spectrum of cuts that we're talking about, and really voicing how that impacts their particular children. These are not easy conversations, and I don't envy any of them.
Right, and Shauna, I just want to give a shout out here. We'd asked our legislators, because we know all of our Jeffco legislators have town halls, and we had asked them in a couple of posts to try to include information on the district's budget and schools and the state's budget, and include district leadership. So I want to give a shout out to Senator Zenzinger and House Representatives Titone and Tracy Kraft Tharp for including Superintendent Dr. Glass and 2 school board members in that town hall. They had 120 people tie into it, and I think they recorded that, so if you have a chance you should go to that, because that was a Facebook Live. And also I want to give a shout out to Senator Tammy Story, and I believe Representative Lisa Cutter will be joining her, along with JBC member Dominic Marino for tomorrow evening, Thursday evening, where they will also include Dr. Glass and school board member Susan Harmon. So if you haven't had an opportunity to tie into one, tie into the other, because they're taking questions live, and this is information that all of our community needs to know. Sorry to go down the tangent there.
Oh no, and honestly, that's something that has been in the back of my head. We should grab those Facebook Lives and put the recordings on our website as well, so that people have access to that and they can watch those if they weren't able to attend.
Absolutely. So while we think about the magnitude of these cuts, what we also all need to remember is that the districts are dealing with these budget reductions while planning for fall. And I know that there were lots of questions during the town hall, and I'm sure that I've seen it on Facebook. Teachers and parents alike are very anxious about what to expect in the fall. And of course, as Dr. Glass has said, it is definitely a work in progress, mostly because the unknowns, there's so many unknowns. But the list here that we have on this slide and on the next slide are all from the Colorado Association of School Boards. And it's a list of the various requirements that school districts will need in order to reopen schools. And you need to remember, all of these things cost money. And if you put it together, basically having school in fall is going to cost more this year than it would if COVID-19 had never happened.
Yeah.
The other thing that we need to remember is that our schools have picked up, and this is how important our schools are to our whole community, and that they've picked up the extra duty of providing food program centers. And that's huge. And we also need to remember, especially here in Jeffco, Jeffco Schools is the largest employer in our county. So everything ties together. It's all about the community, not just the school and just teachers or just employees. It's about a whole community that gets impacted with these budget reductions.
Most certainly. And huge shout out to our Jefferson County Commissioners. The summer food program starts on the 27th of May, and we'll get those locations of food service shared on our website as well. But the regular school year ends on the 22nd. So for that food, so we do have 5 days worth of food that's not available, but the Jefferson County Commissioners have partnered with the school district to make sure that that is provided for summer food starting on the 27th.
Once again, we can't underscore this enough. We need a reliable source to supplement funding for schools, and that is Initiative 271. And I just want to stop here before I go any further, because when I began this, I mentioned that there have been some changes, and I want to make sure that we let everybody understand what those changes were. I think by now everybody's heard that that the governor and the House and Senate leadership designated $510 million for K-12 education, and that comes from the CARES Act. I believe it's the HEROES Act that schools are getting. Now, there's some important information that you all should know, and at some point, SJK will have this on our website as well. But what we need to make sure everybody understands are a couple of important things about this, and that is, first of all, these are one-time dollars. The other piece we need to make note of is that they may not be used to backfill budgetary shortages. They have some very specifics tied to them. In many cases, the districts are still waiting to hear from the Colorado Department of Education for what that guidance is. But these, in order for expenses to be eligible, they must have occurred after March 1st, 2020, and they need to be spent by December 30, 2020. From what I understand, the dollars that the districts will be receiving from that, and I think Jeffco gets a little bit over 40 million out of that dollars, will probably help a lot with the COVID stuff, and that's mostly what it's intended to do, is to help cover a lot of the COVID expenses that we've taken on since March, and help with some of those COVID expenses that they'll pick up with trying to reopen in fall. So lots of things have happened since we first put this together. And if you have any questions about that CARES Act dollars, feel free to contact either Shauna or myself about it. If we can't answer your question, we can certainly find you if the right source that will give you the answer. The other thing here I want to mention is we're talking about FTC, Fair Tax Colorado's Initiative 271, and we, SJK, we've got petitions and we're waiting. But you may have also heard that the governor signed an executive order that would impact how signatures can be collected. And we have heard directly from, and many people probably have heard directly from Fair Tax Colorado, and that there are a couple of things that impact that executive order. First of all, there needs to be some guidance still to come from the Secretary of State's office about how all of that would happen. And the other piece that we need to make note of is the fact that a lawsuit was filed to challenge that. Almost as quick as the executive order was issued, the lawsuit was filed. So Fair Tax Colorado is asking people to please not change how you've been collecting signatures. We still need to follow the rules. Nothing's changed. As soon as something does happen, or we hear more from the Secretary of State's office about if we can change the collection of those signatures, we will make sure we let everybody know.
We're looking forward to a safe day when school is over to start that process and get petitions and signatures started. We're really excited for it.
And we have a link on our, there you go, at the very bottom there. If you want to help, and we really, really do hope that you will, even if it's just getting a petition and collecting 4 or 5 or 6 signatures from just your family members that you might see. We need your help in trying to get this on the ballot, because it is definitely going to be a lifeline for our schools and our funding.
And for now, you can email that petition@supportjeffcokids.org, and then we will get back to you. And as soon as it is safe, we will be pushing this really, really hard. And until then, you can probably look soon after school's out for Jonna and I to be holding an event in my driveway, kind of a drive-by petition signing. Bring your own pen. We'll take care of sanitizer and things like that as well. But you'll be able to get one of our 120 petitions that we have waiting, and make sure that you sign a petition so that we can start getting Jeffco taken care of. And of course, we have 4 Senate districts in Jefferson County. So it is crucial that we all do our part to get this passed. It most certainly doesn't equate to adequate funding for our schools, but it is a great way to plug up some of the holes in an ongoing manner. So it's not just a one-year thing. It would be a wonderful thing, and our kids really are going to need that, and our staff members are going to need that. So if you care about kids, or you love those teachers that took care of your kids so well during the pandemic, and you are really over this remote learning thing, this is a really good way to say that you support public education by participating.
Exactly.
And that is all we have for you today. We look forward to hearing from you. Again, you can email petition@supportjeffcokids.org. John and I very much appreciate your engagement and participation, and look forward to answering any of the questions that you have.
Everybody stay well.